And we have Dan. We have Jim. Maybe I should write this down. Dan, Jim, Kathy, Susan, Nate, Ken. Let me see who else is on the screen here. I'm sure there's others that are missing.
Peter,
Pat.
Peter and Pat. Okay, I just hadn't scrolled to you yet. And Dana wrote and this afternoon and said she can't join us. So we have 8 present, Dan, and if you'd like, it's after 5:30, you can get started.
we will start then. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll take a minute here for anybody that wants to make public comment, limited to 3 minutes, please. Is there anybody out there that wants to say something?
Dan, I'd like to. This is Kirsten Klockner.
Go ahead, Kirsten.
Thank you. So I just looked over the packet and noticing the talk about sidewalks in certain areas, especially Middleton Beach Road. I'd just like to say I'd like the city to focus more on finishing the gaps that are already there. So along Century Avenue, finishing the path to lead, on Allen Boulevard, finishing the path to lead all the way to Century versus focusing on funds to put a new sidewalk or anything in on Middleton Beach Road. And then also extending the path going through Parisi Park all the way, is it to Boulder Lane? I can't remember. It turns to sidewalk for just like a quarter of a block and then also does not have a ramp going down. I think that the city needs to work on getting the existing gaps figured out before it starts putting money into new projects.
Okay, thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on to approval of the minutes.
This is Susan. I move approval.
Susan moves approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
I second.
Who are you recognizing, Dan?
I'm sorry, who said second first?
Jim seconded.
Is that
Jim?
Jim?
Yep.
Yes.
Jim seconds. All of those in favor of approval of minutes, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Okay, our next item is our 5-year street improvement plan. So this had come to the Plan Commission for the Plan Commission to recommend, to send a recommendation to the council. And I thought that it was appropriate as this committee is looking at taking a more active role in these matters, that it should come to Bike and Ped, and Susan, a member of Public Works, agreed. So that's why this is here with us. And I'd like this to, my goal is that this will come to us earlier so that we will be able to have a chance to weigh in on these projects as they're being kind of sussed out for the year. So that's why we have this on here. Mark, do you want to take it from there and give us the rundown?
Sure. Thank you for that introduction, Dan. So in your packet is the introductory memo from Sean Olsrud, one of our engineering technicians. I presume you've read that. We also have a table of the showing the mill and overlay projects as well as the full reconstruction. So mill and overlay is something that's short of reconstruction, whereas obviously reconstruction is self-evident. And then you have a map that shows the different years in which Public Works has these years as placed to the streets as placeholders in those years. I mean, that's subject to change each year, but this is basically an attempt to bring some help with budgeting and projections for the future to communicate to the public, as well as with internal budgeting to get a handle on having certain dollar amount set aside for roads every year for road repair. And ped bike facilities are oftentimes enhanced. Certainly with street projects, it's easier to do that with street projects as opposed to a standalone project. I can try and zoom in here. Let's see. It's hard to see this. All right. So the color for this next year is teal. For I should say for 2022 is teal. So Middleton Beach Road is obviously here. Middleton Springs Drive, which is by the McDonald's. The end of Clark Street and Lee Street is visible there. And then I think the northeast side was the, yeah, here it is, the Shorecrest neighborhood, all the streets there. So that is what Public Works has identified for the next year. Let's just focus on 2022 first, so I don't, so we don't get too complicated. So this is.
Was there something on Clark Street also?
Yes, yes. Why does this say 2023? Parmenter. Oh, this memo was updated from the last time I saw it. So here we have, so Middleton Springs Drive was adjusted, so that's now 2021 is what they're proposing because of flooding issues. There's not really good sidewalks in that area either. There's one by the Starbucks leading to the McDonald's. I can't recall if the rest of it is there. So I don't really know how else to guide the conversation other than to, here's the table I was thinking of. So here again are the mill and overlay. It's everything up in the northeast side, and then the reconstructions are the first projects I mentioned. Mendota Avenue, which is a tiny stub by Middleton Beach Road, and then I mentioned the other streets already. Of these, the northeast, the mill and overlay projects are, I believe there's sidewalk along at least one side of the road, probably both in that neighborhood. It's a neighborhood from the 1970s, and we were building sidewalks quite regularly then. Obviously, Middleton Beach Road lacks sidewalks. Middleton Springs Drive, we can look at an air photo here in a moment. The end of Clark Street is missing some sidewalk, but that is with the Middleton, or with the T-Wall project, there'll be a sidewalk added on the west side of the street. As Dan mentioned, the idea here is it's a good idea to have this referred to the committee in the future, so that earlier, so that it can be at the front end and advise the Public Works Committee as they're drafting this. This is an annual exercise, gets finalized usually by late winter, and becomes the plan for the next 5 years, and then it's a rolling every year, it's updated. So Dan, I'll turn it back to you.
So Mark, the only gaps that we have in the coming year for 2022 projects would be Middleton Beach Road. Middleton Springs, I think it has it on one side.
Yeah, I'm gonna pull up an air photo.
And Clark Street is being done through the Conservancy Bend project.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have to say Middleton again, that'll come up. All right. So it is on one side of the street. I knew it wasn't on one side, but I couldn't remember if was the length the other way. So so under our policy, what we normally would have is a sidewalk on the south side as well, and then on the west side of Middleton Springs Drive up here. Middleton Beach Road, I'm virtually guarantee that there'd be strong opposition to adding sidewalks there from property owners, residents.
Mark, could I explain that
Sure.
when we add sidewalks, the residents are the ones who are paying for the sidewalk?
Right. And then Clark Street, go ahead. I wasn't sure if you were done, Susan.
No, I'm through.
And that's a good point, Susan, that the property owners are paying for the sidewalk. But this is This is where we have the discussion of public policy of where we think that we should put sidewalks. And so I think what we're asking here, or what the question is do we feel as a public policy that any of these places warrant sidewalk for whatever criteria we decide to set? So I don't think necessarily the criteria is because the property owners pay for the sidewalk.
No, well, okay, I made it a little shorter. I think the projects are always designed with sidewalks as an option, and then they're presented to the public. And we get usually, I think almost always, a very loud opposition to the sidewalks. Is what happens.
This is Jim.
What's the
Could somebody
cost?
give me some clarification as to, I tried to follow what happened with the Mayflower Drive from Maywood to Columbus? That I
Yeah.
thought that had been approved by us, that had been approved by Public Works. And I know there was very strong opposition to it.
I
But it
can
was in-
explain that.
Go ahead, Susan.
It was a removal because of partly the strong opposition, but also it was a cost thing in terms of budgeting. And we were going to have to find additional money to do that short 2-block section that wasn't put in the budget. So it was
Susan?
really a major
Susan?
budgeting issue.
It was the budgeting. I don't think it was the opposition. I think it was just the budgeting that it was taken out,
Right, but
not the opposition.
yeah,
I would agree with Kathy's assessment. At this point in time, it was taken out due to the fact that with the increased cost, it did not fit into the budget plan. So that
Right.
part of the project was put off until
2024.
23, 24 maybe?
24.
Right. It'll come back for a vote in 23. So
Yes.
As Kirsten mentioned, Kirsten Klockner, there's she was referring to at Parisi Park. There's a sidewalk actually that comes out there now. She was advocating for a full 10-foot wide path to replace this, what's probably just a 4-foot wide sidewalk. And then there's a ramp there, but it's off-centered, which I presume the reason why that was done in the past was to try and discourage higher speeds of bikes from racing into the street without stopping. I presume that's the only reason I can think of, unless there was proximity to this pole was a problem, but that's not uncommon to have these offsets. It's kind of annoying as a bicyclist, but this also isn't obviously a very wide route for biking. Did anybody want to see anything else map-wise? I basically reviewed it as you were talking. The northeast side has, as I said earlier, I can confirm that there's sidewalk along all those sections in Shorecrest.
I have a couple. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I have a couple questions on Middleton Beach Road when they do this reconstruction. Are there curb and gutters on both sides of the street?
Currently, no.
Are they
No.
going to be putting in a curb on both sides with this new project?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer. Susan, you're on Public Works. Do you know?
We certainly haven't discussed that. I would say if they do it like in Middleton Hills around the wetlands area, there's curb and sidewalk on the side with the houses, and then just a concrete area for the street to drain into the wet area where the
One
detention
question, one
ponds
thing I
are.
have that, it's one thing if you don't put in the sidewalks, and I'm thinking about back on, is a Boulder, when I went driving around there, and if there were cars parked there and there's no sidewalk, you're forced to walk in the middle of the street. And I was wondering if as a committee, when there's no sidewalk, if we would eliminate the parking so that people aren't forced to walk around cars. If, you know, it's kind of a give and take. If they don't want the sidewalks, I mean, they might have to give up parking.
Kathy, what I think would be a good solution for Boulder, since the road is so wide, is putting the sidewalk, narrowing the street and putting the
No,
sidewalk.
I'm talking about Middleton Beach Road. If we were to, I don't know, is there parking on Middleton Beach Road?
Yeah, yes. People do, in fact, here's one right there. People do park.
See, we can't, well, we're seeing as your 5-year map, Mark. I don't know if you think we're seeing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why is that? I've been going at air photos this whole time.
You seem to be having more fun than we did. We didn't get to see any of that.
Oh. Okay.
So Kathy, your suggestion is kind of as a trade-off then, in areas where there are no sidewalks, to then have no parking.
At least to be safer for people to walk in the streets if they had to.
Are you having, would you advocate then no parking just on one side of the street? So that
Right.
Okay. Yep. All right. I can see that.
And on this case, I don't know what are the directions I'm looking at. I'm looking at Google Maps, and I don't know, on Middleton Beach Road, because I just, when people start walking in the middle of the streets to walk around cars, and if there's snow and it's just not a good solution.
Are there plans to make this go through and actually open it up on the north end?
Middleton Beach Road?
Middleton
No.
Beach Road, sorry.
No, I don't think that there's any, no. See, Middleton Beach Road is a little bit different than we were referred back to the situation over on Columbus and Boulder and in that neighborhood. It's a little bit different in that there's no direct path to a park. There's not a school in the vicinity. It's kind of a street that's just out there on its own. So
Dan, it's also next to a park. The west side is all park.
well, that's that soccer field.
The soccer field, the Mary Jacobson property,
I didn't know people could even get into the Mary Jacobson property.
well, it's Conservancy land. That's what I'll say. It's not necessarily where you would want to get into, that you would need a sidewalk, is what I'm trying to say.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
No,
Strange.
Because that's like a half-mile cul-de-sac, isn't it? Is that basically what?
Yeah.
I mean, that
yes.
for emergency
Kind of, yeah.
services, has that ever been an issue? Or is not really, since it's in the city, I guess, but I mean, it definitely delays response time, I would think, by not having it go through on the north end.
Well, it didn't go through on the south end either. It's another cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
Well, on the south end, there's a park. On the north end, there's not really any barrier other than, this could easily be removed. I guess I would caution you about focusing too much on one street and discussing putting a street through, even if that may have merit or not, when it's not been noticed. I would be a little concerned about going too far
Right.
down this.
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, sorry to bring it up. I'm just, if it's getting redone
Well,
next year, it's
In
probably.
the context of pedestrian bicycle facilities and what's the future of the street, I mean, I think it's appropriate to discuss it. I just,
Mhm.
wouldn't want to go down that path too far. If you were to talk about this and make some recommendations, I think you'd want to wait till the next meeting for that.
Yeah.
What I'm looking at here is Middleton Beach Road, and I'm assuming this is the north where you said it cul-de-sacs out, but there's Lake Street, a private drive that connects back to Lake Street. Is that how people get out of there, or do they turn around and how do they?
They get out, Kathy, on Mendota Avenue.
Yeah, they get out right down here. So you're seeing the 5-year map on your screen still,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Do you see anything along the edges here? Can you see me moving? You should be able to see me moving that.
No,
Right.
No,
It's frozen. That's interesting.
we can see your mouse now. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I don't understand what's going on here. I'm gonna
Okay.
keep looking at it. Anyway, is there something else you wanted me to display from the what's in the packet?
No, that's good.
Okay.
So they, I guess where we're at with this is, does anybody have any strong objections to or would somebody, are we comfortable with this 5-year street improvement plan and recommending it to the council?
Without any sidewalk comments, right?
Well, for the year of 2022. And, following this year, as Mark indicated, what I'd like to see is this come to us sooner so that we have a little bit more time to have input. And as we work out, I think one of the things that we really want to work out, and we started this project, I don't know, a couple of years ago, then the pandemic and everything happened and we've gotten somewhat off track, but we're going to try to put together, and I think that you were kind of instrumental in it, Kathy, putting together a complete streets program to try to tie this all together. And we kind of gotten, we've kind of gotten away from that. And I think that this committee might want to get back to that project so that we have a plan and some kind of continuity moving forward of how we want to deal with these issues, because it does seem at this point that we're a little bit haphazard, a little bit more reactive instead of
okay, Dan, for when do you want to see it in terms of public works? Because we just approved this.
well, I think that we need to have these conversations, and then because then Public Works will look at
I mean, I think it was the last Public Works meeting that we approved the 5-year plan.
was it?
Yes.
Okay.
So what I would suggest is maybe we look at all these areas in terms of sidewalks and send something like a memo to Public Works. Because the main thing that Public Works is looking at these in terms of the quality of the road surface, and then also what's underneath in terms of water and sewer lines. And that's what puts it into the category of complete reconstruction. And then Sean Alsrud makes rough estimates of how much each of these projects is going to cost and juggles so that it comes under the 2 million that council allocates for road repairs.
But we know if we're going to advocate for sidewalks in a place where there isn't sidewalks, then that is going to change that math for whether or not. And so we need to have that information to Public Works so that they can add that, because otherwise what happens is Public Works approves a project, does the math is already done. And at that point, you're taking the plan and you're juggling it all over again because you've added sidewalks where.
Yeah,
that-
I think they're putting
understand what I'm trying to
sidewalks
say.
in to begin with, and then we have the public hearing and respond to citizens, and we've basically usually taken them out.
We just adopted the comprehensive plan, and a large part of the comprehensive plan was to do complete streets. So I would imagine that if Public Works were looking to redo a road and it didn't have sidewalks, being that that's part of our comprehensive plan, that they would look to bid it with the sidewalks in.
Yeah, I think they're bidding it with the sidewalks and planning it with the sidewalks, and maybe that's
One-
what needs to be confirmed.
One thing I don't want to do
We need
is
to
take the sidewalk gap map and send a memo to Public Works. Part of the problem with that is we don't need to open up a can of worms for people to get upset when there's not any plan for 20 years to do their roads. I just don't want to get people upset by sending anything just based off of the gap map.
Yeah. Okay, maybe what we need to get from Public Works is the Pacer ratings on the streets. And that could give you a longer term list than the 5 years of which are the streets in the worst condition. And we look at those and then give that as recommendations based on that.
I think that would be helpful.
And we could start doing that process now.
Do you see the air photo, by the way, now?
I
We
Yes.
do.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I hadn't heard any feedback, and so I wasn't sure. I was gonna give up if that didn't work, so.
Yeah, and there on Middleton Springs Drive, it shows sidewalk on the other side.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's-
And then here's the Middleton Beach Road corridor, obviously. And I was showing this earlier and I didn't know you couldn't see it, but this is what it looks like without the curb and gutter. People are able to park alongside. See, there's somebody parked down here.
I don't they even park on the grass and put boats and stuff in the grass?
Yes,
I've
they're
seen that done.
parking
Yeah.
It
on
looks
the
kind of
side of the road.
looks junky.
Yeah, because that's really just a
It does.
2-lane wide road.
For the cost, where are they gonna put the sidewalk on the lake side or in towards the wetland area? Because they're in
Well,
a lot of space to work with there, looking at your photos here.
No,
No, there
it's
isn't
not a
there.
very wide street. This is one of those things where I could see. I agree that the Public Works approach now is to assume that there's sidewalks based on our adopted policies. And then they do get removed when in many circumstances it's been happening. I shouldn't say many, but often. So I don't know if they're, given the unique circumstances of this property of this street with the very narrow setbacks from houses, from garages, and then the wetlands on the other side. I don't know what their plan is. This is unlike Boulder and Columbus. There's not much room to narrow the street to add a sidewalk, which is what's being done. I should have said Mayflower. Not
Mark, I don't think there's enough room to have on-street parking.
Well, and if you add a curb, that diminishes that ability to straddle so I don't know what the plan is here. I think, as Dan, just to summarize what's before you tonight, is the plan that, where do you see opportunities for and gaps for sidewalks that are essential to include as we plan projects for next year? That's really, I think, the best work before the committee right now, the most helpful thing you could do. And so that's where Middleton Beach Road and Mendota Springs Drive are I think, the two.
Mark, can I
And the
add
end of
one
Clark
more
Street.
suggestion?
Sure.
I think we need to provide some guidance to Public Works, but more importantly to council for improving where we want to add a sidewalk, especially in these very old neighborhoods that have been there for 50 years without a sidewalk, that we don't charge the full cost for putting the sidewalk in, because some of these are getting quite areas where it's $3,000 or $4,000 for the homeowner. And that's where we're getting the objection. if the city could pick up a little bit of that cost, could make it easier to get sidewalks in.
I would agree with that. A question that, this is Jim, a question that I had on this is, if it's my understanding right now, for street repairs, reconstruction, the property owners are not assessed directly. And with the bike paths, the property owners are not assessed directly. But when we start talking about pedestrian traffic, we're saying the property owner has to pay for it. Is there a way to look for funding of some type to cover sidewalks?
That's what I'm suggesting. It would be to get council to change that policy.
Susan, if you're talking about when they're doing a street without sidewalks, and this would be the first time that they're coming into that neighborhood with sidewalks, but what about when they do streets in other areas of the town, they have a sidewalk and they have to, if there's a crack or it's not level, then that's assessed to the homeowner.
That's assessed to the homeowner, yes. This is just a discussion we need to, I think, to have at council to get all this information perhaps out to citizens. So I know for my own house, because the next door, when they built that house, they damaged my sidewalk. I ended up paying about $1,500 on repairing sidewalks. And this is a brand new neighborhood.
There was a table done, I don't remember who prepared it. It might have come from Public Works, comparing the assessment policies for different communities in the area, Verona, Wanakee, et cetera. Some communities fully charge, fully assess, like Middleton. Some absorb it as part of the street project altogether, and some do 50-50. Madison, I think, is, I can't remember. Didn't we have that before the committee here once, Dan?
I don't recall it. It was somewhere, I'm not sure if it was this committee, I don't recall.
Yeah, well, it was, I think last fall or I don't remember when it was sometime in the last year. So the practices are across the board. Back in the 90s, there was an effort to try and spread sidewalk costs, absorb them as part of projects, if you will. And there was resistance to that at the time from council members who said they took the position that city everybody has paid for their own sidewalk, either in the course of through the development, it was part of the cost of building their residence, or it was something that they are assessed after they have moved in and are assessed for repairs. So they've all been paying, and now they don't want to pay for somebody else. So that was the resistance back in the 90s. I remember that debate very well. But I wonder if there's a way to have sort of if there's a desire by the council to move towards that policy of not having 100% assessments, going to 50% or something less. Maybe there's a way to do some sort of graduated progression. We don't want to make this overly complicated, but maybe there's a way to kind of transition toward that. That's a council decision.
Could you have TIF money help pay for it?
Only in TIF areas, and there really needs to be a benefit to the, we have used TIF to put in sidewalks where there's perceived to be or thought to be an economic development benefit.
That's such a limited area of the
Right.
of the city that it wouldn't be of help to, certainly to where we have the gaps for the most part. Okay. I don't even know, do we need a motion for this to recommend this, Mark, or is this more just for discussion purposes?
Up to you. I think weighing in on where if you see there's a need for an opportunity here to put sidewalks in, I think reinforcing that or whatever policy, whatever recommendation you want to make is certainly appropriate. The end of Clark Street, the east end, does not have sidewalk currently adjacent to Clark Street School. So I would think that would be a good location. Do you want one on the other side of Middleton Springs Drive through a commercial area? And then, you know, Middleton Beach Road, what do you do with that? So if you have opinions on it, if not, if you just have no reaction, then we can have the minutes reflect that.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or any thoughts about recommendation? Or
I do, Dan. I would say
Susan?
we maybe should just recommend to Public Works that they always bid as an option the sidewalks.
Yes, I would agree with that.
So that they always include sidewalk in the design that goes out for bid.
Right, as an option in the design.
With the option being to remove it. But either way, I know what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, I would make that motion.
Do we have a second to Susan's motion?
I would second it.
Jim seconds it. Is there any more questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
I,
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Our next topic is planning for new Century Avenue Bridge trail improvements and option for trailhead at Pheasant Branch Conservancy on Century Avenue. This too came to Plan Commission last night with 4 different options for a trailhead. Plan Commission looked at the 4 options and were recommended option A or D. Do you have those options, Mark? Where you can put them up?
I do. What I have on the screen, well, let me go to the original packet.
And then, Mark, I have a question for you. I don't know how plugged in you've been today, but there seems to be some conversation with the county that this project is going to take longer than anticipated in planning and time. So it wouldn't be this year. I think this year project, they were talking about 22. And part of the conversation we had last night was the idea of applying for a grant to start phase 1 of the trailhead, which would be the parking lot and the bike path. Does the fact that Dane County doesn't believe that this will happen in a short time, it'd be over a year, does that change applying for that grant? Does that grant then, the application for that grant then have to wait for the next grant season?
I do not know the answer to that question. I'm sorry, I didn't, maybe I didn't fully hear everything you said because I was trying to find the options B and C that were dismissed by, that weren't recommended by Plan Commission. So you're saying, is there going to be a delay with the increased cost in the project from the county? Is that going to affect our grant?
No, the county said there's going to be a delay that with the project. Number one, they have to come up with funding, and they don't have it funded yet in the design. So this project is probably a year out. And so my question is, because of what seems to be a change in the timing, is that going to change the timing for applying for the grant?
I would think the answer is no, because we'd want to, I'm sorry, I don't remember that off the top of my head now. If that, I don't know the answer to that. My gut would say that we would still go ahead with applying now, just so we can get our budget, our ducks in a row. I mean, I don't know why we'd want to delay applying for funding through a grant just because the project is 1 year further out. I would think we'd want to proceed with our grant application. And I know that Abby has spoken with, and Matt Amundsen have spoken with the DNR. They have looked favorably at, they're very well aware of what we're doing. They think we have a competitive project for grant funding. The question is, which design option should we consider for the trailhead? the developer of the apartment building, the owner, Jacob Klein, is very concerned about an option that would have a shelter located farther in, well, away from his lot and put into the Conservancy. The idea is to have some restrooms and a shelter as an amenity for this part of the Conservancy. And so Jacob is concerned that having this would lead to more parking space and shelter farther away, and he feels that's detrimental to his property. The Plan Commission last night, as Dan mentioned, there were differing opinions, some strong opinions that this option is not desirable, but there was also one or two people who said that they thought this was acceptable. So where this is going, I guess we are looking for your feedback at this point. The concept is to also have a path go underneath Century Avenue as part of the reconstruction of this bridge. I've been, and I'm happy to report that there seems to be support certainly support at the local level and hopefully at the county level too, to widen the bridge so that there can be some daylight, a break in the bridge like there is at Parmenter Street, so that puts some daylight on the path but beneath it. So that enhances both the safety and the aesthetics of the experience going underneath the bridge.
Mark, could you pull up the actual design from Vanderwall of the project? I think it would make more sense to people.
Design from Vanderwall. This is from Vanderwall.
No, we're seeing the Google map.
Yeah, we're seeing the overhead again.
Oh,
We're looking at Stagecoach Apartments.
Unbuilt.
it's weird.
Correct.
I'm sorry, I don't know why this is happening so you're seeing, okay. So you're seeing, okay, is that better?
No,
Really? You're not seeing,
we're seeing google.com/maps.
Yeah, we're not seeing the 4 different concepts.
for the life of me, I don't understand that. Thanks for letting me know, Susan.
Yeah. Yeah, if you could just pull up
stop.
Jeff's A.
Well,
and
I
D.
have it up. I've had it up this whole time and I don't know why it's not. How about that? Is it working now?
Yeah, it's trying to work.
Yes,
There
that
we go.
worked.
Nice.
Change. All right. Sorry about that. So this I was actually walking through this here. So this is Trailhead option A, which has a shelter. Here's the Stagecoach property, the apartment building. To the right of this is the L-shaped parking lot with the shelter concept. Here's the path going beneath Century Avenue with the widened bridge with the daylight idea in between. This is just an example down here at the bottom left of the 10-foot wide path under a new bridge that we wouldn't have a bend like that, fortunately. To the right here, coming from the word Pheasant, is our new trail, the North Mendota Trail that comes in. So this is Trailhead option A, and then please tell me that you can now see B.
We see D.
Yeah, that's actually D. This is the revised
Well, it's
version.
labeled B now at the bottom, but you're right, Dan. This was option D, not to confuse things. But this is the one that I sent you about an hour before the meeting because I got it this afternoon. Jeff Maloney from Vanderwall had taken comments from last night and narrowed it down to these two, just for the benefit of the other committee members. The other two options, which were formerly called B and C, showed had the parking lot here with the shelter on this side of the creek, but the shelter was down along Century Avenue, down here. And there were just two different options with that. And I think it's safe to say, Dan, that there was nobody on the Plan Commission who, after the discussion, was supportive of either of those options anymore. So that's why it's not even being shown. If you'd like, I can pull it up, but I think it's not.
These were the two that had the most support, and
Exactly.
in option A probably had the most support.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yes. Mark, could
Also,
I clarify Jacob Klein's statement? He prefers option A.
yes,
He also told me, because we'd like to get some public art in there, he would be willing to donate some money for that. If we
is
do
that,
option
that a
A.
public, is that for public consumption? I mean, you just said it, obviously, but is that something you want me to note in the minutes or not?
I wouldn't put it in the minutes, but
Okay, I just wondered.
he was amenable to that. He's been pretty agreeable on request, no, not small dollar, but reasonable requests for things like the fences and landscaping and so on off of his property.
So what we're looking for from a staff standpoint is the committee's guidance as to your reaction to all these plans, and if you have any guidance or preference regarding what are now options A and B.
Mark, I have one question for you. Is there then the opportunity with this project, because our North Mendota Trail is stopping at Century, right? Stop at Century.
So I'm glad you're
Right.
asking that. The answer to that is yes. But this is showing, this concept shows a 10-foot wide path alongside Century Avenue, the north side. And actually, I believe, the south side too, until you get to the existing trail. So this 10-foot wide path on the north side continues west, then it's labeled here 10-foot bicycle pedestrian path. You'll recall that we had asked Jacob to leave room for that path, and his sign that's installed actually is set back far enough to accommodate that path. So we have the ability to put the path all the way up to Jacob's, the stagecoach driveway. So the idea is to get it to Old Creek Road. I'd love to get it down a drive eventually.
So in this project, we could add that much.
Yes, this would be, yes. So that would be the time to do this, is because the bridge will be completely reconstructed. And so we want to make sure we have, so the visual here would be, imagine Parmenter Street. It's basically a Parmenter Street style bridge with the two, with an opening in between, with the sidewalk, a 10-foot wide path on not just one, but both sides in this case.
Okay.
So here's option A with the trailhead, the shelter on this side of the creek, and then the concept down here. The path connectivity is basically the same either way. Well, here the path goes a little farther north. I'm not sure why, but it could be. It probably goes this far north to help with turns and all that to get to the shelter. And I'm not sure. These are just concepts.
I think there's also sewer line issues.
Yeah, thank you.
Because the sewer line does go through on the west side and then crosses the creek and goes back north and then to the east.
Sewer interceptor.
So Mark, staff is looking for a concept recommendation from us as to which which concept do we like? Is that what you're looking for?
Mhm.
Yeah, and actually, I just realized that's an outdated staff comment. Whoops. What do you see on your screen now?
I'm in
The agenda.
Agenda.
Okay, that's no longer the most. That was before I left town. That was the way the agenda looked, and it's not the way it looks now. So I'm trying to pull that up. I forgot to download the new version of it. I thought I was trying to be all prepared, and then Abby changed it after I left, which is, I really appreciated her doing. I just forgot to make a copy of it.
Mhm.
All right, I'm going to pull this up in the meantime. So now you're seeing the concepts again.
Mhm.
Let's see here, I need to go to here. All right, I'm getting there. I just need to navigate to the website.
Dan, do you want comments on our opinions of which option?
Yeah, what I think is that we can discuss what option we are interested in. We can have comments, but then probably looking for somebody to make a motion to either recommend.
Do you want a motion first?
Sure, we can do it.
Okay, I would move.
Can I just have a question here?
Sure, go
There's-
ahead, Kathy.
There's so many on this meeting that we haven't, I just would really like to hear some of their opinions on these. You know, Pat or Peter or Ken, this is these are so cool, and I'd really like to get their impressions.
Do you need a motion for that kind of discussion?
Well, it's been a freewheeling discussion, so we can certainly have that discussion. But why don't we do it the proper way? We'll have a motion in a second, and then we'll have discussion.
Okay, I would make a motion that we consider option A or recommend option A.
And do we have a second for that? I'll second it for discussion. Okay, now,
What do you see on your screen? Do you
The
see this
agenda,
And,
with the long staff comments or not?
the long version, yeah.
yes.
Okay, good. That's what I meant to have up before.
Okay, so does anybody, Peter, Nate, Jim, Ken, Pat, do you have any thoughts on this? Tell us what you think about these two options and kind of where you're falling on it.
This is Jim. As far as discussion, what are the major differences between A and B?
The major difference between A and B is in A, the shelter is on the east side of the creek,
West side, Dan.
or excuse me, west side, the west side of the creek, with the parking lot surrounding it. In D, where the shelter is on the east side of the creek and the parking is all on the west side. And in D, the shelter is more in the Conservancy. Can you see the picture there? Mark's got the picture up of D.
So the first option has 35 parking spaces with the shelter on the same side, and the second option has 38 spaces with the shelter on the east side of the creek.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking, excuse me, I was looking at the original A and B.
Yeah, I'm sorry that this got changed. There were four options originally. B and C were discarded after last night's Plan Commission meeting. So that leaves us with A and D, but today D got relabeled to B. We should have just kept it as D, in my opinion, but it is
Whatever.
Or option 5.
I got it.
You had to be there.
And the shelter will be what? There will be restrooms there. Will it be like a shelter that can be rented?
Well, and that's a conversation that, and this issue is also going to go to Parks, the Parks Committee.
Conservancy lands.
Conservancy lands is going to go to a number of committees. So the kind of the vision of what the shelter will kind of be sussed out from there. It seemed to be at plan last night. It seemed to be that the opinion was simpler is better. So this would not be a all-out park shelter, if you will. it would be more restrooms, some information. It wouldn't be a place where you would gather and rent out to have a family picnic. So it wouldn't be that kind of, it wouldn't be that kind of shelter.
My opinion would be that for safety purposes, that A would be better, because this shelter is a little bit more remote in B
Mhm.
than it is in A. And I think if it's not going to be, you know, if maybe only 1, 2, 3 people are going to be using it at a time, that I think A, being in the parking area and that is probably a much safer place to have it.
Good point.
Very good point. And it would be better lit.
Yep.
At night.
point.
Yes.
Hey, everyone, I gotta hop off on this call right now, but I do prefer A for the
Okay.
same reasons Jim had said, and based on just having it as one site location, it just makes a lot more sense, like you said, to keep it simple and yeah. So thanks,
Great.
everyone.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks, Nate.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. Okay, does anyone else have, is there any more discussion?
I
Any
just,
more
I have
questions?
a couple points, I guess. I kind of wish we knew what parks wanted with this, because if they did envision something that in the future was going to have more use than a restroom facility, then it would make sense to go with B, and kind of have that option for it to become and evolve into more of a facility than it would be just in the parking lot where it's going to be, you know, pretty much set the size and everything. But I'm kind of, from listening to everybody, I'm kind of getting the feeling that the goal is to have the parking facility and the restrooms kind of be separate from the Conservancy area, but attached to the Conservancy area. And if that's the case, then I think A makes more sense.
It's, yeah, I would like to comment. It got referred to parks, but it's really Conservancy lands property. And, you know, we have the 2 committees with.
Right.
And so this is more Conservancy lands.
Right, thank you, yep.
One way you could look at this, the comments have been very helpful, but you could also look at it from a bicycle and pedestrian use standpoint, in terms of how people will use the trail system and the flow. I mean, that might be helpful because that's the expertise of this committee. I mean, the comments about safety and all that are very germane. I just, you know, if you look at how the trail system is oriented with the sidewalks, you know, that might be helpful to look at it through that lens.
Yeah, Mark, actually, that's a good point, because up until last night and really looking at it, I liked option D the best. But when I start looking in terms of the trail and how it goes under the bridge and comes up, having the shelter there makes more sense. And it encourages people to use the trail going under the bridge instead of across Century Avenue and then along the sidewalk. So I see that as a big safety issue too.
Okay, any more comments, questions?
I just want to say, well, everyone that's coming from the east, I think B would be more convenient if they're using the trail from the north and coming from the east, and it maximizes the parking. And I was thinking that at one time I heard that they wanted to have enough parking so that if a school group would come, that they'd have room for a bus to park there. And I think that would be important to have at least some area where the bus could park. And I like that it's located by the trail in B. And until we know exactly what they're planning, it's kind of hard to say, you know, if it's the restrooms and just a little open area underneath a covered area, you know, it's hard to say. But I kind of like B, because it maximizes the parking. And it could be, you could put lights over there too. I think it would be, I mean, no one would want that just sitting in the complete dark.
There's by the way, this shows the existing kiosk that's over there.
Right.
And if you can see that little circle.
Yeah.
So that sort of is already a focal point, the nerve center, if you will, of the Conservancy in terms of you come in and orient yourself. So, we have differences of opinion among staff too, just in case you're wondering. So you guys are hitting on some of the same points. The safety argument was safety point is a new element to this discussion, which
What's the situation with that property for sale on the corner of Century and Branch Street? Because every time I drive past it seems like more people are parking there and going into the Conservancy.
Sorry.
That, I mean, it's kind of, a lot of people are trying to get across that intersection. That's kind of a busy intersection.
So
Any thought
there's a
of
developer.
purchasing that property?
No,
Okay.
there's been several developers interested, and there is somebody moving forward with it. I'm not involved in that project, so I don't know the details as much as Abby would, but the private sector is interested in redeveloping that property.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I'm just concerned from the senior citizens is it's safe and there's places to sit down and it's safe to get in and out of with the intersection. That traffic goes through there quite a bit, but the entrance where it is on Century, that's kind of a tight area, getting in and out, particularly if you want to drive off to the east. Has there been any thought about traffic patterns in that?
And I had a question too, will the new property developer have a driveway that cuts through that south sidewalk the way they currently do, or will they only be able to exit out the east side?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer.
I run that every day, and that's one of the more dangerous sort of congested areas, especially with high volume of sort of COVID people outdoors with their families and stuff. And it's not very well paved, kind of bumpy through there, not easy to get through.
There have been some conceptual renderings. I just don't remember off the top of my head if they were hoping to have access off both streets.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just going to, I think all these, I mean, I was pretty excited when I saw a lot of this because like I said, I run through there every day and it's one of the more dangerous congested areas when there's sort of peak people outside. So I think it's fantastic that they're doing all this.
Okay. Well, at this point, we have a motion to recommend A, right? Is that correct?
That's what I heard
That's correct.
from motion by Susan, seconded by Dan.
Yep.
Sorry, stupid question, but does the patio mean anything? I mean, is there a reason why there's a patio in one and not in the other, or is that just a?
It's just for concept. Nothing has really been decided upon as to what, the shelter is going to look like exactly. What, I mean, there's kind of an overarching view, but so the patio is just kind of put in there as a potential, as a concept. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be there.
I gotcha. Right.
I will note that this is something that I think it's worth pointing out is that this will be this is going to be sunk down. So there's going to have to be a fence, retaining wall here with, I would presume, a fence on top for safety.
Mhm.
Some sort of decorative fence, because the path has to come up about 10, 11 feet, maybe 12 feet from underneath Century. So there will be a ramp coming up.
Oh, okay. I see what you're talking about. Into the parking lot.
There's no way to do this without having a big drop off here. In fact,
Right.
that would be nice to have it labeled actually. Well, it just say retaining wall. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
you can see it right there on the west side.
From a
So
Sorry, Mark, from a use
no.
perspective, is that curve gonna be really tough for someone coming on a bike underneath and then wanting to go stop at the bathroom
I was
I-
wondering that same
versus
thing.
the other side?
Pat, I completely agree with you. I looking at this from a bicyclist standpoint, you know, we have some 90-degree turns in the Conservancy now, most notably to the north of here, that bridge that there's just 2 90-degree turns associated with that bridge. The one down here to the south has that steep turn as well. In fact, this one's even more pronounced. I don't know why the bridge is located farther south here. Obviously, it's shifted north. I mean, that again, it's a concept.
Yeah.
Either way, there's going to be a bend. We want to get the, you know, you could angle the bridge, but then you have a longer span and higher costs. So either way, there's going to be a bend here.
Do you think, well, I'm looking at this, I see there's going to be a certain number of people who need the parking, but most of the users of the Conservancy are on bikes and pedestrians. And this would force them, if they wanted to use the shelter, to have to go to interact with all the cars and stuff, where if it was in option B, they could avoid all that and they could just stay in the Conservancy area.
Yeah, although I would agree with the prior comment that a lot of people are parking in that parking lot where the vacant one that's being sold.
Mhm.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Okay, so the motion that we have is to recommend, unless somebody wants to make a substitute motion, the motion on the table is to recommend option A.
I had to endorse option A. You wanted to say
Yeah,
recommend?
endorse. Well, endorse.
Is that okay?
Endorse is fine. Option A.
Concept, yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of option A, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
Sounded like we had two no's, is that correct?
This is Kathy, I voted no, I prefer B.
I voted no also.
Okay,
Pat Trainer and Kathy Olson. So that's, there's only 7 present now. So I presume that it's 5-2. Mr. Chair.
5-2. Okay. That is the last item on our agenda. Mark, you have staff updates. Was there any update that you wanted to give us quickly?
Yep, tomorrow we have the pre-construction meeting tomorrow morning for the North Mendota Trail, Phase B. So that's at 8:30 tomorrow, 7:30 my time.
7:30 your time, 8:30. I need to talk to you.
That's fine.
Okay, well, with no other agenda items, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you all for your willingness to meet at 5. Well, I didn't ask all of you, but I asked several of you. So thank you for meeting a little bit later. Appreciate it. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, guys.